This is how we learn at Salvador. We start with a unit concept. In the first grade, we learned about relationships, and our masterwork was Cumpleaños de Lala y Tutti by Carmen Lomas Garza. In fifth grade, we learned about interdependence, with our masterwork being Strand Beast by Theo Jansen.
Because these units are both very similar in scope, we wanted to see what parallels we could draw between the first and fifth grade understanding of the unit concepts and our work to integrate music into the units and the next generation science standards and Common Core standards of California. Before branching off into their individual projects, we taught first and fifth graders the same basic information about science and the art of sound, music, and the orchestra.
And where else do we hear sound, Jonathan?
Around the world.
Good. And then how do we use sound to communicate?
We can use a drum.
We can use a drum. Good. What else could we use?
A phone.
To help the first and fifth graders begin to understand the concept of sound, we used our next generation science standards to learn how sound is produced and how it can travel over a distance. We started with sound identification, where the students had to recognize and identify familiar and new sounds.
Are you guys ready for this one?
Yes.
Connor, could you show us your evil laugh again?
Sound is like what you can hear, like particles, they're pieces, and they're like dust that pick up and they fly around, and when sunlight hits it, you could see them, and they're visible, and it hits your, and when you hear things, it hits your inner ear, and you can hear them.
To understand how sound works, we became scientists and created string telephones. We took it one step further in fifth grade and hypothesized, tested, made observations, and discovered what happened when we changed materials.
What's your favorite color?
Did you hear it?
I think paper was the best because it doesn't echo as much as metal and plastic. And I think when I was using paper cups, it did not vibrate like the other cups.
Good.
In fifth grade, we also learned how the ear functions and how we are able to hear sound. The students acted out how sound waves cause the eardrum to vibrate, allowing the brain to recognize the sound.
Hi.
Once we learned about vibration and how sound is produced, we wanted to test what we learned by conducting another experiment. In the jumping rice experiment, we hypothesized how different materials such as wood, glass, cotton, paper, aluminum foil, wax paper, and plastic would conduct sound and affect the movement of the rice. We used two different types of music, hip-hop and classical, to see how each would affect the rice. In first grade, we collected the data and made observations as a class. And in fifth grade, we broke into teams to conduct our research. Here's what we found.
Are you guys ready?
So they're like shaking.
The rice was shaking, but did it fall off?
No,
just
they didn't jump very much
They
like the other
didn't
one.
jump, but they shook, right? And did the wood make noise? Let's listen again, just to the wood this time, and see if it makes noise by itself. So is the wood making noise?
Yeah.
The wood does make noise. Did it get sucked in like the plastic? No, it didn't.
So we predicted that when the hip hop music was on, the rice would bounce a lot because hip hop has a lot of bass, and we predicted for the classical music that the rice would vibrate a little.
Great, and then what did you find, what actually happened in the experiment for the hip-hop music?
The hip-hop music, it actually flew more than classical, because it had a lot of bass, and it probably bounced a yard high.
And then in the classical music, what did you find?
In the classical, it didn't do that much. It just bounced a lot and jumped off.
Great. To incorporate the unit concepts, relationships, and interdependence, we began to learn about the orchestra, from how the instruments make sound and instrument families to how the orchestra operates as a group. First, let's talk about how the instruments make sound.
What are different ways we can make sound on instruments?
Buzz.
Yeah, and Diego, how about you? What do you think?
Clapping.
Clapping, okay. And then Mia, what's another way we can make sound on an instrument? Yeah.
The orchestra itself cannot function without the idea of relationships or interdependence. We need all of the individual or interdependent parts of each instrument to come together to create one piece of music. Without the relationships between the musician, composer, and conductor, the orchestra would not be able to function. Let's see what our students have to say about this.
What's a conductor?
Conductor means you do this, that means people play louder. You do this, that means middle. And you do this, and that means stop.
Very nice.
In first grade, we made connections between the structure of an orchestra and our family trees.
So who's like you in the orchestra?
The conductor,
Why do you think the conductor is like you?
because it's a human and it makes instruments go.
With the fifth graders, we took the concept of the structure and layout of an orchestra a step further by relating it to that of the solar system. We made observations about the ways in which the structure of an orchestra might compare or contrast to that of the solar system. Students made connections between their unit concept of interdependence and the structure and function of an orchestra and the solar system.
The sun and a conductor is sort of the same because the sun and its planets would be just cold without the conductor. I mean the sun and an orchestra wouldn't work without a conductor. Everyone would just do their own thing.
To further understand the concepts of relationships and sound, the first graders became instrument makers themselves and put their knowledge of sound production, vibration, and instrument families to use. Each instrument was inspired by the student's own family member to highlight the relationship between the musical instruments in a family and the members of a human family. Some students created instruments which represented their parents, cousins, siblings, and even pets.
Who are you going to pick for your instrument?
Daddy.
Why?
Because he's so nice to me.
Who are you going to pick for your instrument?
I'm gonna pick my fish.
The students brainstormed, planned, drafted designs, and conducted research and development before making their instruments.
Omar has grass too. Omar, what kind of instrument family do you think that would belong to? Maybe a string if you're bowing or fluffing your lips?
Let's see what they came up with.
Tell me about your instrument. What is it?
It's a paper plate maraca, and it makes sound if you shake it or hit it.
What's inside?
Corn, and this is what it sounds like.
Let's see.
This is what it sounds like.
While the first graders were making instruments, the fifth graders took a different route to understand and integrate sound into their unit. They became composers and used GarageBand to create their own instrumental song based on a planet in our solar system.
We're doing Saturn, the bringer of old age. And now every one of us is doing a kind of verse of the actual thing. I'm verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, verse 4, and we all designed our own type of pattern for the first verse and the second verse. And for the finale, verse 5, we're all going to choose our own instrument and add it together. And over
Students researched the scientific facts and mythological characteristics of their planet. They listened to The Planets by Gustav Holst to see how a classical music composer represented each planet. And they learned about a pre-Renaissance philosophy and mathematical theory created by Pythagoras called music of the spheres that said that each planet on its orbit produces a very specific pitch or sound, and that these sounds combine to create a beautiful universal harmony. Students explored the idea of space as a vacuum where hypothetically no sound exists, and compared it with the sounds that have recently been recorded by NASA's Voyager 1 and the European Space Agency's Philae comet probe. With all of this information at hand, the students then set out to create their own planetary music.
So, what planet do you guys have?
Jupiter.
Awesome. And what are the characteristics of Jupiter that you're going to put into your composition?
We're gonna make it happy and fast because even though it's far away from the sun, it still spins 10 hours a day.
Venus is the goddess of love, beauty, and peace. So we're putting all of those more of sounds and transforming it into music.
Okay, so is that more mythology or science that you're using?
Mythology.
How did your planet relate to the music you created for our final project?
Our planet was Earth, and the music that we made for it that was about life and dying. So at the beginning it was like babies, so we put soft music, and then after we put pumped up music because like younger kids they like a lot of loud music. And then after that we put traveling music because in the world and people like to travel a lot into different places. And then at the end it was low music and starting to fade off. It will start when you're getting older and then pass out. Yeah.
We then conducted an experiment with the compositions each group created to see how the vibration from their song interacted with a non-Newtonian fluid called OOBLECK. Our students learned that OOBLECK is a combination of cornstarch and water, and it is neither a liquid nor a solid. Students chose different materials such as food coloring, rocks, and leaves to also reflect their planet's physical properties in the OOBLECK. When mixed with the sound vibrations, the OOBLECK comes to life and almost dances with the music. The final piece of our project was to collect the OOBLECK onto a plate and let it harden as a circle to create a physical representation or model of the students' planet research, composition, and the OOBLECK experiment.
With the universe is kind of like a model of the universe, in our own way. We each team works together to make all the planets, and it's kind of like a model of the universe.
At most other schools, subjects are not often meant to be connected. meaning that the main topics in science, math, history, music, etc. are taught as separate subjects, which do not necessarily relate to each other. Students at Salvador go beyond learning about the concepts in each individual subject and are able to make countless connections between seemingly unrelated subjects. Leonard Bernstein explained the importance of interdisciplinary values by saying that the best way to know a thing is in the context of another discipline. This concept helps students to better understand the material and be much more engaged in the entire learning process. We love using the arts to allow our students to explore learning in a fun and creative way.
What was your favorite thing we did this unit?
The dancing OOBLECK.
Great, and how do you think that relates to our idea about the orchestra, or the solar system, or even interdependence?
Well, the dancing OOBLECK, it's because of the vibrations, and there's vibrations in an orchestra, and even though people think there's no sound in space, there is a bit of sound, which are the vibrations that we can use to make music. And dancing OOBLECK, we use music to make that jump up and dance.
We love learning at Salvador. Vibrations, vibrations, that's how we make sound.